There's a guy next door who's doing some yard work, so I hope it isn't too loud. Because it is now time for Chapter 22. Win or learn. So, today I participated in my first jiu-jitsu tournament. It was crazy. I have to admit that it was even harder than I thought it would be. First of all, the scene was nuts. The crowd was berserk. I've never been around so many people yelling and screaming so much, and it was hard. The kids I fought against were good and strong. Before my first match, I was super nervous. The kid was named Barry, and he was bigger than me. When I walked out onto the mat, I actually felt like I was going to throw up. The referee had us shake hands, then bow, and then he said, "Fight." When he grabbed my gi, I could already feel something different than what it felt like in training. He was grabbing me hard. He pulled me and pushed me and pulled me and pushed me, and I felt like he was going to throw me across the mat. Then he stepped in and tripped me on the ground. But luckily I was able to put him in the guard on my way down. Once we were on the ground, I realized again how crazy competition actually was. He was going nuts. I kept my guard closed tight and tried to pull him down and control him. Then he grabbed the collar of my gi and started to try to choke me. At first I started to panic as it got harder to breathe. Then I heard Coach Adams say calmly, "Relax and do what you know how to do." At first I thought, it's a little hard to relax when someone is trying to choke me. Then I thought, don't listen to Coach. No, I beg your pardon, that was wrong. Then I thought, just listen to Coach. So I did. I tried to relax and detach from all the emotion and chaos in the fight. Suddenly it felt much better. I thought about what I knew how to do. Then it hit me. Arm lock. This was the perfect spot to do an arm lock. His arm was straightened out as he tried to choke me. All I had to do was to lock his arm into position with my legs and use my hips to put pressure on his arm. So I did it. I swung his legs around his arm and trapped it and moved my hips to apply the force, and he tapped out. He tapped out! I looked over and saw Nathan jump in the air, and Coach Adam nodded his head and mouthed the words, "Good job." Uncle Jake was standing on the sideline with a massive smile on his face as he pumped his fist. I won my first jiu-jitsu match. But that was only the beginning. As soon as I walked off the mat, Coach Adams said, "Great work. Now relax and get ready for your next match." Next match? I just finished my first match. I sat down and drank some water. Nathan came over to me. "That was awesome. You tapped him out." "Thanks. It was crazy." "What was crazy about it?" he asked. "The whole thing. The crowd, the screaming, how hard my opponent was fighting, everything. It might have been crazy, but you did it." "I guess so," I said, and still kind of not believing that it happened. "What's next?" Nathan asked in an excited voice. "I have to get ready for my next match," I told him. "Okay. Do you need anything from me?" Nathan asked. "No, I'm okay. Thanks, though." I told him. I sat there, still trying to catch my breath. Uncle Jake walked over towards me. "Relax," he said. "Just relax." "I'm trying," I told him. "I know," he said. "It's hard." Then I heard Coach Adams say, "Mark, next match. Let's go." I got up and moved back over to where Coach was. The referee pointed to me and waved me onto the mat. Here we go again. My second match, and I was still tired from the first one. The kid I was going against in this match was about the same size as me. It looked like he was at least as nervous as I was. but you never can tell what someone is going to do or be like on the mat until you feel what they're like on the mat. And it turns out this kid was strong. Gotta find my place. As soon as the ref said fight, the kid's face turned from nervous to angry, and he charged at me and shot for my legs. He was trying for the classic double leg takedown, and I did the classic double leg takedown defense. I sprawled, kicking my legs out behind me and landing on my chest on his back. I thought I had him stuck, but then he did something called a sit-out, which is a great wrestling move, and it almost put me on my face. But I knew it was coming, so I scrambled away and got back to my feet. The kid looked like he was going crazy. Every time he grabbed me, he snuck in a little slap and then pinched my skin. Every time he touched me, it hurt. And it definitely seemed like he was doing it on purpose. Then as we approached each other again, both of us looking to score a takedown, he popped his head into my head with some force, headbutting me. That really hurt. That is when I started to happen. I didn't notice it at first, but I started getting mad. Really mad. I started losing my temper. I could barely tell, but my Uncle Jake could. Detach, he said from the side of the mat. Don't get emotional. Do your job. Do what you know how to do. As soon as I heard Uncle Jake say that, I knew he was right. I was losing my temper. I was breathing harder and all my muscles were too tense, and it was making me out of breath. So despite my opponent slapping, pinching, and headbutting me every chance he got, I calmed down. I got my temper under control, and I think this frustrated my opponent even more. His face started turning redder and redder and redder and redder. His slaps got harder, and he charged forward like a bull. After another hard headbutt, I saw a look in his eyes of total rage. He shot in towards my legs to take me down again, but he made a classic mistake. He left his head sticking out. It was easy. I barely moved my arms and I had his neck grabbed in a choke. I felt him panic and wiggle like crazy, trying to get me off of him. Then finally he tapped out. The referee placed his hands on us and said, "That's it." I let go of the choke and stood up. The referee pulled us to the middle of the mat and raised my hand. I had won. Next up is the finals, Coach Adams said to me. Okay, was all I could say. I was too tired. Even though I had stayed calm, it was still a tough match, and I was tired. Uncle Jake came by and said, "Nice work again, Mark. You ready for the finals?" "I am," I told Uncle Jake, and I felt that I was. Even though I was tired, I had been doing really well. I felt like I could win this whole thing. I sat for a few minutes, and then they called my name again. I walked out onto the mat once more. "This is for the final," the referee said, as I stood there facing my opponent. My opponent looked very calm. He was actually a little bit smaller than me, but I knew that skill level was more important than size, and that for him to be in the finals, he must have done some really good jiu-jitsu. We shook hands, and the referee pointed to us both, then clapped his hands and said, "Fight." I made my way to the center of the mat, and so did my opponent. We circled cautiously, then he grabbed my head and pulled it down towards the ground. I pulled my head back up hard to get away from him. He took another step toward me, then grabbed my head again and pulled it down even harder. so I pulled my head up even harder to prevent him from putting my face into the mat. When I did that, he let go of my head and quickly shot for my feet. My head, body, and arms were so high that he got right in and wrapped up my legs. Then he hoisted me way into the air and slammed me onto the mat with a perfect double leg takedown. By the time I hit the ground, he was already across my side, so I moved to defend that. He was suddenly in the mount. I stayed calm and got into a defensive position. I felt him digging at the collar of my gi, trying to get a chokehold on me. But I wasn't having any of that. I pulled my arms in to defend my neck from his attack. Then, boom, in a flash, he switched the attack from a choke to an arm lock. Before I knew it, he had my arm completely straightened out and I was tapping. That was it. It was over. I started to get mad, but I looked over at Uncle Jake. Win or learn, he said. You learned. He was right. Seeing that Uncle Jake was perfectly calm calmed me down too. I guess I learned from that one, Coach Adam, I said right after I shook the opponent's hand. Then I sat down next to Nathan. That was awesome, he said. Awesome? What? The arm lock he did? No, this whole day it was awesome. You're awesome. You think so? I know so. That was so cool, the way you handled yourself out there. But not just out there, everywhere. Your bike, your job, your attitude with everything. Where does it all come from? I thought about this for a minute. I sure had changed a lot from the kid that lost his temper and threw the paper mache pumpkin at Nathan. I had learned even more about being a warrior. It came from my Uncle Jake, I said. He taught me a lot. He taught me to be a warrior kid. A warrior kid, Nathan said. What's that? I'll tell you when we get back to my house. With that, I got on the pedestal to receive my second place medal and then headed home. I had won something more important than second place today. I learned more about jiu-jitsu. I learned more about myself. Okay, well, that's the end of chapter 22.